Hey there, I'm Andrew Panda Lucarello.
I'm Lauren Brakebill with the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Hi, I'm Brooklyn Schock with the Arkansas Anime Festival.
Hi, I'm Tara Landers with the Morgan Nick Foundation.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Fincher with the Kendrick Fincher Memorial Foundation.
I'm Karen Tucker with the Unschoolers of the Ozarks.
I'm Glenn Gay with Epsilon Sigma Alpha International.
I'm Janie Ann Keita with the Arkansas Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
Hi, I'm Paul Chapracki, Director of Freshwater Now.
Hi, I'm Karen McSpadden with Windrock International.
We're one Army!
I'm Dr. Mike Courtney with the Arkansas Chiropractic Society.
This is Dawn with Project Linus of Northwest Arkansas.
I'm Dr. Dale Huntington, the Arkansas Chiropractic Society.
Be sure to catch the Caine interviews.
Be sure to watch the Caine interviews.
Join us and watch the Caine interviews.
Please watch the Caine interviews on Channel 18.
Please catch the Caine interviews with Shannon Caine.
To watch Cat TV. Dude, I should have this written down.
Be sure to catch the next Caine interviews on Cat TV.
You're watching the Caine interviews on Community Access Television, Channel 18, Fayetteville, Arkansas.
On Cat TV, Channel 18 in Fayetteville.
Cat TV, Fayetteville.
On Cat TV, Channel 18.
On Channel 18, Fayetteville.
Cat TV, Fayetteville, Arkansas. See you soon.
I'm Dr. Joe B. Hall from the Arkansas Country Doctor Museum. Be sure and catch the Caine interviews on Community Access TV.
I am David Thurno. I'm president of the board of directors for the Arkansas Country Doctor Museum in Lincoln, Arkansas. Be sure and catch the Caine interviews on the Community Access TV.
Hello, and welcome to the Caine Interviews. I'm your host, Shannon Caine. Today we'll be learning about a museum in Washington County, Arkansas. The Arkansas Country Doctor Museum is open to the public and has displays of antique medical-related artifacts and much more. This museum celebrates the country doctors who played such a pivotal role in the lives of rural Arkansans. There's a lot to learn and a lot to do at the Arkansas Country Doctor Museum. Here to tell us more about it is Dr. Joe Hall and David Thurno. Thanks so much for being on the show.
We're glad to be here.
All right. Well, let's start with the basics. Where is the Arkansas Country Doctor Museum located, and what are its hours of operation?
The museum is located at 109 North Star Street in Lincoln, Arkansas. That's 1 block northwest of the square in Lincoln. We're normally open Wednesday through Saturday, 1 to 4 o'clock. We do open up other hours for special groups, and during the Apple Festival, which is going to occur October the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, we'll have some special hours.
Okay. Now, how long has the museum been in existence? Could you tell us a bit about its history?
Well, the museum was dedicated in 1994. It was established by Dr. Harold L. Boyer, who was the son of Dr. Herbert Boyer, the last doctor who practiced at the clinic. The museum is basically located in what was at one time a medical clinic and a home for the doctors. And he established this museum to honor his father and all the other Arkansas country doctors. It is the second such museum that we know of. The museum basically has three major parts. The north wing was the living quarters for the family and the doctor. The center part was the doctor's office, the waiting room, and the nursery. The south wing was the doctors and women's wards, the surgery room, and the delivery room. It was built in 1936 by Dr. Bean, who was the first doctor to practice there. There's been 3 different doctors to practice at the clinic. In addition to the building which I just described, we have the carriage house where we house our Model T and a 1986 buggy, which was owned by a doctor and used in Missouri. We also have our Harold L. Boyer Educational Building, which was built in 2004. It contains our office, meeting room, and records.
Okay. Now, what kinds of artifacts or exhibits are housed at the Arkansas Country Doctor Museum?
Well, most of the artifacts are related to the medical practice and the care of the patients through the 1950s. We don't have much that's any later than that. We do have a few things. The living quarters, or what was the living quarters for Dr. Boyer, still contains many of their same possessions, such as their furniture, Mrs. Boyer's hats, her salt and pepper shaker collection, and her dinner plate collection. One of the largest artifacts that we have is an iron lung machine, which provides a means for victims of polio to breathe. And with that, we have some other special items related to a very special lady who lived in one of these things for about 35 years. She was a very special patient of Dr. Hall's.
Okay. Now, where do the museum's artifacts and items come from? And does the museum still accept donations of items?
Most of the artifacts come from families of deceased doctors, although we have received some from retired doctors such as Dr. Hall, who gave us some of his things that he used when he was practicing, and others come from hospitals and doctors' offices. Because of the lack of space, we cannot accept everything people offer us. We're simply to the point that we do not have room for everything. But we try to accept things that still fit with the time of period that we're trying to honor, which is prior to 1950. So we still take things, but we try not to take anything that's too modern.
Okay. And what types of educational programs does the museum offer to the general public?
Well, we have a very active educational outreach program, and we're very fortunate to all of our workers, most all of our workers are volunteer, and we have some very important volunteers in our educational outreach. One of them is Dr. Mitchell Singleton. He's a retired ophthalmologist, and he's just recently retired and is now working on advanced degrees in history, and he's particularly interested in Arkansas medical history here in Arkansas. He has an excellent PowerPoint type presentation which we use with the students. Then we're very fortunate to have Dr. Betty Battenfield on our committee. And Dr. Battenfield has advanced degrees, PhD degree in education, but she started out as a bedside nurse and has worked up and through every station of nursing. And she is the one who presents a program which points out to high school students and junior high students how they can start out as a CNA, a certified nurse's assistant, after only 6 weeks of training, and how they can work up, so to speak. Mm-hmm. They can pay for their education and as high in nursing, or when they can decide after they get to be a nurse they want to be a doctor, then you can go on and work it out that way. I'm interested in the the personal characteristics of the doctors, what made them successful, or why were they so satisfied with their practice. The doctors that we study often practiced, most all of them who lived long enough practiced for 50 years. We have one doctor we've studied who practiced for 72 years. And they never wanted to quit practicing. They were highly held in the esteem of their patients. They were almost revered by their patients. And so I have been interested in this because these doctors really had no scientific medicine. They didn't have electricity. They didn't have any kind of electronic equipment. They had very few pharmaceuticals. Most of them were herbal in origin, no antibiotics, nothing of this sort. And yet they were revered by their patients, and they had wonderful doctor-patient relationship, and were really experts in the art of medicine. And my interest in the museum has been in how do we choose young people who will find a great deal of satisfaction in the practice of medicine. The doctors are very high on the list of suicide. And to spend 20 years of your life in education and then decide that you don't really like being a doctor is quite a disappointment.
Yes.
So my hope is that we will be able to fit the personal traits, the virtues, and the characteristics of students in such a way that they'll know whether or not they're going to be happy in healthcare delivery or whether or not they might be better off in some other field.
Wow, okay. Why are the country doctors such an important part of the history of Northwest Arkansas?
Well, they were often the most important person in the community. When you look at the various aspects, they were what I like to call whole people. They were not only probably the best educated people in town, but their spiritual maturity, their emotional maturity, their social maturity. Most of them were were Masons and leaderships in whatever they were in. Almost all of them became involved in politics. They were usually the mayor of the town, or they ran for other political offices. So these were really the leaders. They had the best horses, they had the best dogs, they had everything, and they took care of the community. For example, during the Great Depression, they worked to establish canneries, and everybody brought what they had and they canned it, and then it was frequently the doctor who supervised the distribution of these things. That was before the government had food stamps.
Right. Okay. Well, tell us briefly about a few of the country doctors who practiced in Washington County, Arkansas.
Well, our studies, we have detailed studies on more than 20 of these doctors, and the first one that we studied is James Monroe Boone. James happened to be, we didn't know this when we were studying him until we got into the study, but he was the first cousin of Daniel Boone. Oh. And he came to the White River Bottom area out around what is now Elkins in the 1830s. That would be considerably before the Civil War. We were able to get a great deal of information on him because he freed some 20 slaves. He and his family owned that White River Bottom out there. And he freed his slaves quite a time before the Civil War. and his brother-in-law, who owned the property next to him, sent his slaves over to kill him. And they did, but it took him about 3 days to die, and he was able to tell the story. So there was arrests, and there's court proceedings, and so we were able to go back and trace this family, and now we know of the Boone Cemetery, which is out at Elkins, in which many of the people we've studied is buried. We've found that cemetery there. So he was one of the first doctors that we studied. There are a couple of doctors who have 5 generations of doctors in their family, and your viewers will know these doctors because they practiced up to about 1950. As a matter of fact, I knew them both and worked with them. One of them was Dr. Ellis, Dr. E. Forrest Ellis, whose daughter was Dr. Ruth Ellis Lesh, and she was one of the first female physicians in this area. Dr. Ellis was a scholarly gentleman who was a very devout man and studied. He was a lifelong learner. He wrote scientific papers which are just now beginning to find his prophecies fulfilled as to what would happen in medicine. And his family is still very active in this area. Susan Shattuck, who has been in social work for many years. The other one is Dr. P.L. Hathcock. The P.L. stood for Pope Leo. And it was my pleasure to work with Dr. Hathcock when I first came to Fayetteville. And he has 5 generations of doctors. One of his great-great-grandsons is now practicing in Little Rock. And so I knew these people, and they established, for example, Dr. Hathcock established the Hathcock Clinic, and he built the first freestanding doctor's office in the area. Dr. Ellis and Dr. Ruth Ellis Lesh established the Planned Parenthood and many of the things that are still active. And of course they were substantial in the first hospital, which was City Hospital, Fayetteville City Hospital. So there's any number of these people that we could talk about, but I think from a historical point of view, perhaps Dr. Boone, from a local point of view, of things that people might remember. These doctors practiced. Dr. Ellis and Dr. Hathcock started practicing about 1900. As a matter of fact, Dr. P.L. Hathcock started in Lincoln, the same place where the museum is. But he went to Fayetteville and later on, and then his 2 sons, Dr. Lois and Dr. Alfred, joined him in practice, and now Dr. Alfred's son's son is in Little Rock. So there's a lot of there's a lot we could talk about.
Oh yeah. Well, it's been fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, what is the Arkansas Country Doctor Museum's Hall of Honor?
Well, Dr. Harold Boyer and I were close friends, and we spent a lot of time trying to decide what exactly the museum stood for and what it was to represent. And what we wanted to hold up was what we wanted to point out were the successful doctors. So we decided that a doctor, to be successful, had to be highly respected in his community. He had to be highly respected as a professional, as a physician, that he should have spent most of his life in one place. A doctor who's not successful often has to move around quite a bit. So they spent most of their life in one place. And they thoroughly enjoyed the practice of medicine. They They never wanted to do anything else. So we have studied over 20 what we call successful country doctors who practiced primarily before 1950. And we've done interviews sometimes. Pretty soon we will have videotaped interviews of the doctors themselves. But now we have their children, their wives, the nurses who worked with them, the patients. So we have talked to all these people, and you can watch those interviews through the museum, and you can see. So we've worked these people out in detail, and there's some 20 of them now, and we have displays in the museum of their life, usually rotating every 2 or 3 months, having another 2 or 3 doctors from our Hall of Honor.
Okay. Approximately how many visitors does the museum receive annually?
This year we're still counting in the year, but we think we'll have about 400.
Wow, okay. Pardon me. Can the public volunteer to help out at the museum?
Absolutely. We love to have volunteers. The museum would not function without volunteers. We only have 1 part-time paid staff, and so everything is done by volunteers. We try to match our volunteers up based upon their interests and abilities. We try to match them with our needs. We can't always do that, but some of the current needs that we need, the areas of docents, we always need docents to show people through the museum. We need some file organizers. We need writers and research people, data entry. We certainly need people to help us with our publicity, maintenance, exhibits, and of course right now we're trying to establish new board members and officers for next year. So anyone that's interested in any of these areas can call anytime and leave a message at our phone number, which is area code 479-824-4307, or give us an email at countrydoc@pgtc.com.
Okay.
We also need photographers. We do a lot of interviewing, and we don't have any professionals to set our things up. We need people who can copy our DVDs. We've gone from oral tapes to VHS tapes, and now to DVDs, and the technology moves faster than we old people can move.
Dr. Joe's right. I failed to mention that, and I intended to. Sorry about that. But we have a lot of needs, so I think anyone can find something that would interest them.
Oh, okay. And now, are there any future plans, like development, improvement, expansion, and so on for the museum?
We don't have any current plans to expand the museum.
Okay.
There are a couple things we would like to do, but we don't have any plans right now. But we have a number of projects that are ongoing, which we're working on. And of course, one of our big areas is to improve the number of visitors we have.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons we're here today. We would like to invite people to come see us. We think we have a great museum, and it compares favorably with other people, and people enjoy coming. To increase the number of visitors, we got a couple things. We're trying to complete a video, which the script was written by our board members, and the Lincoln High School multimedia class is putting that together for us. So it serves 2 purposes. It'll help us, and it gives them a project to work on. We want to provide the use of our facilities for possibly a documentation on country doctors, which may show on TV here in 6 to 9 months. We want to develop a small video presentation for the visitors, which will give them an overview of the museum and show them what they'll see and provide them with a history and the mission of the Doctors Museum.
I'd like to say too that from the standpoint of educational outreach, our goal in educational outreach is to have every student that doesn't have a role model, to give them a country doctor as a role model, particularly if they're interested in healthcare delivery. And we now are working with UNLV, the University of Nevada at Las Vegas, and working locally, so that you could come to our website and you could see any of our interviews. We could put everything that we have about our 20-odd doctors. Any of their families from anywhere could look in, or somebody making studies could come and plug into the data that we have and that we have accumulated. And so we're looking forward to the advances in technology that will bring our studies and what we try to make available to the students. And we have a very active student. We're expecting to have well over 100, perhaps as many as 300 students through this year or in a 12-month period. We're connected with Harbor High School. They have a very active medical program. They're bringing their students down. We're negotiating with the medical school that will have a branch in Northwest Arkansas, and we hope to be able to participate in the educational activity of the medical students in this area. So we have a lot of ambitions.
Right. Well, it sounds like you're really bringing, you're just bringing the old country doctors into the future now, and for everybody to learn about them and their mission and what they did.
Right.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.
All right. We've been learning about the Arkansas Country Doctor Museum, which is located in Lincoln, Arkansas. Check it out. And we have been talking with Dr. Joe Hall and David Thurnow. And I'm Shannon Caine for the Caine Interviews. Just keep watching Channel 18, Community Access Television, Fayetteville, Arkansas. We'll catch you next time around. Take care.